Hey guys, Effie here. Today I'm going to show you how I made this card using our new Charmed Wildflowers stamp set. Now this is a card that I created for our new release Instagram hop, but I'm uploading the video today because I finally found time to edit and post it. So let's get started. I'm going to start off by white heat embossing this beautiful floral cluster onto a piece of watercolor paper. After I've inked up the stamp with some clear embossing ink, I use my Misty to stamp this image onto my watercolor paper, and then I hit the whole panel with my heat gun. Next, I'm going to do some wet in wet watercoloring using Ken Oliver color burst. So I wet one of the floral areas first, the largest floral, with some clean water using my medium tipped water brush, and then I dropped in some Prussian blue color burst pigment into the inner portions of my floral petals. Then I took my clean medium tip brush and I blended that color out just a tiny bit to the edges of the panel. Then I went back in and added deeper concentrations of pigment to the inner portions of my petals. Next, I'm going to apply some olive green color burst pigment into the leaves, but again, I'm using the same wet and wet technique. So you didn't see me wet the leafy areas with clean water, but I do that before I apply any of the colored pigment in, because that is the technique that I'm using today. So at this point, I wasn't really feeling the olive green paint, so I switched over and added some sap green pigment to the leaves to give them a more brighter hue. And I'm just going to go ahead and go over all of the leaves with this brighter sap green color burst paint. Next, I'm going to color in the trio of florals in the top portion of this cluster using indigo color burst. And again, I'm using the wet and wet watercoloring technique. So before I put any of that colored pigment down, I wet the area that I plan on painting with clean water first. And then I used a separate fine tip brush. I picked up the pigment with that fine tip brush, and then I applied the pigment onto my florals, and then I blended the pigment out, and I continued to do so until I was satisfied with the saturation of color. Next, I allowed my panel to dry, and then I took the largest die from our double stitch rectangles large die collection to cut this into an A2 size panel with some stitching at the edges. Next, I stamped the sentiment onto some white cardstock using our Caviar hybrid ink. After I trimmed down the piece of white cardstock strip, I cut the end into a slanted banner, and then I adhered it onto a piece of black cardstock, which I then trimmed into a much more narrow strip using my guillotine cutter. Next, I used my tiny attacher to staple my sentiment strip right onto my watercolor panel. Lastly, I'm just going to add some glass slipper sequins in a visual triangle around my sentiment strip, and my card is now complete. I hope you guys enjoyed today's project and video. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel because I update it weekly. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye!